So essentially what we're doing is a baseline inspection. Anything obvious, anything crazy expensive, customer will know. Hey, I'm Sheldon with Atlas Heavy Equipment Repair, and when we look over an excavator for pre-sale, we're going to look for bucket wear, pin wear, shims, you know, anything basic. We're going to look at all the hoses, do an overview of the hoses. We're going to look for anything obvious on the tracks and undercarriage, obviously the engine oils, hydraulics. In this case, we're going to do some oil analysis for the client so they can have a baseline. If they do go ahead with the purchase, they'll know exactly kind of where the engines and the hydraulics are at. I like to just start obviously in the batteries. Most machines have night switches, not all do. We're just looking for connections. General corrosion, tightness. We're gonna just walk around. We're just constantly looking at the machine while we're walking around. We're gonna look into the pump. It's super clean, not even any real sweats. You'd notice sweats on any hoses, usually a suction line. We're just gonna check the pump drive. We're about midway on the dipstick. That'll be all right for this case. Yeah, so we're just looking at bolts, see if any track pads are loose. Track pads come loose fairly often. Notice one cylinder is leaking out of the top seal, out of the scraper seal. So, you know, I mean, it's gonna be good for the time being. So now we're gonna go up, checking the engine oil. Gonna check our coolant level quickly into the overflow, which the pressurized overflow on this, I mean, it's in a good level. So in this case too, we're gonna grab a flashlight. Then we're just gonna tuck our head down and yet again look for any obvious leaks. Like I say, we're also gonna check the belt, the serpentine belt. We're gonna check for cracks. This one's starting to crack pretty minorly. Nothing to be too concerned about. We're just gonna pull the dipstick and check the engine level. So she's right on the full, right under the full line, which would be good to run. All right, so we know we got engine oil. We haven't seen any leaks. When you're checking the engine oil, check for any milky colorness. Milkiness often, I mean, it means coolant or water, and why? And those two things that don't belong in an engine. So at that point, we would look for why, who, what, why, and when, essentially. If it hasn't been changed in a long time, it's gonna stain the hell out of your hands. In this case, we'll just wipe it off on the rag. In this case, not at all. I've seen some excavators, you do that, it's on there for a week. You know, if it is low, why is it low? Is it burning oil? Burning through the piston, through the crankcase? We don't know, right? So another thing, just because this one has a positive air shutoff, just ensure that it's not tripped. In this case, it's not. Otherwise, your engine will just spin and spin. I guess we're done in the engine. Okay, so then we're gonna check your swing motor. There's a dipstick on this as well. We're gonna check, we're gonna wipe it. It looks pretty clean on the initial. I tend not to try to look at the level on the first dip because it kind of gives you a false reading. So in this case, we are pretty high. Well, we're in a good level above, but absolutely clean. In the case of looking while we're up here, depending on the type of machinery, I mean, this one looks like it, well, it says pipeline on it, so it was working on the pipeline at one point. So if it's a forestry machine, I mean, we're gonna be up here, we're gonna look at the ROPS, or the FOPs, and we're just gonna look over in the forestry protection screen, we're gonna look over, make sure no trees hit it, all the welds, and make sure there's no obvious signs of cracking. But yet again, that's just a quick check. You can look at the hydraulic oil fillers in the vents for, you looking for sweating again, or is the seals gone on the top? Some guys like to top their oils up so much in town here that when they put in 2-3 hours on the machine, all of a sudden the hydraulic tank has went up a couple inches because of the oil expansion, and oil's got to go somewhere, so it generally comes out the top. Just yet again, this is all pre-starting, so we're gonna look at the bucket. We're gonna make just on the underside while it's flipped up. We're just looking for cracks. We're looking for anything. Like this bucket's still in good shape, so same with the thumb. We're looking for tweaking on the right uprights, and that's more or less just to tell you that machine abuse. Just looking at your pins real quick, looking at your bucket keeper to make sure that it's held in. We're just looking. This one's set up for thumb in a different attachment, be it a rock breaker. It looks like a little small with a 90 for a rock breaker, but it could be a pipe grapple or whatever. So it's nice, it's got auxiliary hydraulics. Now I guess we're gonna go into running the machine, starting it up, letting it warm up for a minute. A little chilly here this morning. At least do the bare minimum when you're starting a machine, at least check the engine oil. In this case, we're gonna jump up and we're just gonna start the machine, just like anybody, and then I'm gonna just let it warm up for a minute. Alrighty, we're gonna check the hydraulic oil level. So to test that, we're gonna put it in the service position. So another way to know that you're in a service position is this kind of an old school way, old saying, is just make the chrome disappear as much as you can. Put it into a service position like this. Stick cylinder fully closed, bucket cylinder fully closed, thumb cylinder fully closed. Your boom cylinders will never fully close, like unless you're working on a hill. But alrighty. So we're a little bit overfilled on this unit. I mean, it's nothing crazy, but we're good. We try to stick it in between the red lines. I'm gonna shake the bucket around a little bit, see what condition the pins and bushings and shims are all in. Probably see what kind of power the machine has. Make sure it's all powered. It's gonna lift itself from the front. And then what I will do is just a simple track test. We'll go forward, backwards, same speed on both. Make sure that we walk in a straight line. Make sure one's not pulling one way or another. If we hear anything squealing like excessively, you're always gonna hear noise from undercarriage. Do a test, make sure your safety works. That was a little aggressive for that, but I'm a little tall, so I gotta push these seats back, get a little comfortable. This is just warming up your stick hydraulics, of course. Quickest way to warm up any hydraulic system would be to walk it around and get it moving. Check the operation of the thumb. Checking the swing brake at this point. It's pretty good. So good power there, good breakout power. So you're doing that just to make sure that the hydraulic pumps are still pushing out all the pressure. They start to struggle to push you up. Sometimes you'll have to push down on your stick and your boom. In this case, the boom lifts you up all day long. So in that case, that was pretty good. I mean, that's a short runway of a walk. So you can't get a good justification for it, but it feels pretty good. Generally, you'll have a pretty good idea. Now we're gonna go backwards, same thing. Make sure everything feels good. So far, so good. And while we're doing that, we're listening for undercarriage noise. All right, now we're gonna swing around. We jump out, we check track tension. In this case, it's a little bit slack. And then we'll just jump in and do the other side here quick. This side, I mean, we're looking, it looks roughly like the other side, maybe a little bit tighter. We're looking at the sprockets too all the time. You're kind of looking in this area. I mean, you're feeling for any excessive wear for your pins, and when they get into a really nice sharp point on the sprocket, you know, it's time to think about changing on your sprocket bolts. These hold all your sprockets on. They do happen to come loose from time to time. Operation-wise, we'll shake the shit out of the bucket a little bit and pay attention, see if it moves and wobbles, and push up on one side or another and see if there's any excessive pin wear. So what I'm looking for is watching the pins move. And of course, you're always gonna have some play. We're gonna push down on the bucket slowly. So we're just looking for some play. It's there. It's kind of what I would expect to see in this kind of age of a machine. The main boom's moving a fair amount, but nothing like kind of what we expect to see with a machine with 9,700 hours. It's not excessive or anything. It's what you expect to see with a machine with about this many hours, but it's something to be aware of. The owner of the machine has some concerns that maybe one of the rollers are seized up, so we're gonna have a look at him while he's walking them. All right, in this case, so every single roller moved. So good, so we'll go to the other side. So we're watching those tops, we're watching all the bottoms. They all don't roll at the same time, just depends when they need to. We're watching the idler to see if it's walking any. If your idler bearings go out, you're gonna be popping your tracks quite often. Your sprocket will just walk it right off to the inside or the outside. So something to be wary of. In this case, everything was looking all right. So we're gonna get into a little bit of the tools and we're gonna start taking some oil samples here. In this case, we're gonna just pop the vent, we're gonna pop the drain, kind of flush out any dirt and debris for half a second. Brake clean, mechanic's best friend. When we pull this out, what we're gonna listen for is like a depressurization. Sometimes it likes to spit out all the oil. So in this case, it's pretty overfilled. Why is it overfilled? There it is. See, and I don't want to take a sample off of this because there's so much dirt there. It would be in the reading 100%. We'll drain her down to level here anyway. Oil sample containers, they actually have a fill line on them, which we'll be coming up to here pretty quick. So right about there, roughly. You have your up position, your drain, and your level. Fill to spill. Approximately, you want to keep your oil level about halfway up. So in this case, it might be a little bit overfilled. Overfilling can be multiple different things, but generally the hydraulic motor seal leaking. I mean, this will tell us a lot when we do get a sample of it back. We can even see in the bottle right now that it's fairly shiny. So shiny means metal generally. So be interesting to see what it is. Same thing, we're gonna listen for a release of air, see if it can shoot some oil at us. Ideally not. The oil level is perfect. So same thing, now we'll catch it, plug it. All right, so our finals are done. Engine oil drain is underneath this plate here. You remove a plate, it's simple, just an oil drain from there. So you're gonna have a decently warm engine when you drop that oil, so watch your temperature and it will run up your elbows and burn you. So yeah, that's about it for words of caution on that. Now we're getting in place to do the swing drive. We'll blast it off. And we're gonna clean it off a bit. We're gonna let her drain out a bit, kind of flush the line out. Any kind of oil samples is always, the more you do, the better. That way you have a full understanding of your machine. So here we go, we're gonna start leaking out. So we'll grab a sample here to the fill line again, approximately there. We're gonna throw it back on the ratchet. Okay, here we go. We're gonna do the coolant next. Do a sample on that. When you're doing, after running the machine, you're gonna have some pressure in here generally. It's cooled down for a while now. Slowly release the pressure when you hear it. Get the coolant level filled. We ended up taking a line off of the rad and just let her drain out. So that's the way to get her done. Trying to do a contained hydraulic test here. All right, so we're just gonna pull one of these lines off in the back here, off of the high pressure filter, and hopefully we don't lose too much oil. So we're checking for pressure there. Give her a little blast. Get rid of all that dirt. We're just gonna grab our filter here and then we'll fill this up. And that'll give us our reading. And we'll put this back on. So quick overview of the pre-sale inspection on this machine. Everything seems really decent. Pins, everything's tight, the shims. Undercarriage looks decent still. My one concern on this machine would be the final drive on the other side there. Could be multiple different issues. We're gonna have to find out if there was hydraulic oil in that oil. If it is, we could have a drive seal leaking. When you're going to buy a pre-owned piece of equipment, you kind of want to know the history of the machine. Where did it work? What did it do? For this one, this was a pipeline machine. It probably had a decent life working. So all in all, pretty good. It's probably tracked a lot, hence the final drive issue. You just want to learn what it did. Did it run a hydraulic breaker? What did it do in its life? If we have a good idea of if it's ran hydraulic breakers, if it's ran grapples, processing heads, we can look and there's different wear parts from there. Everybody can have a look at it yourself, but 2-3 hours to have a mechanic go through it with a fine tooth comb like we did today with oil samples and everything. It's almost like getting a home inspection. You're gonna have ideas of what might go wrong when you get into this piece of equipment. Questions, comments, or anything, put them in the comments below, and thanks for watching.